In this video, we're going to be taking a look at histograms, and you'll need to turn your Go Math book to page 477, get out your math journal and a pencil. Now, the essential question we're going to be looking at today is how can you display data in a histogram? So let's take a look at the Explore activity on page 477. It says the members of the high school basketball team practice free throws. Each player attempts 50 free throws. The number of free throws made by each player is listed below. So we can see the data that goes from 25 all the way to 44. Now the first step, what we're going to do with this problem is we're going to use a dot plot to represent the data. Now we know from previous lessons what a dot plot is, so we're going to do that, and let's do it together. So one dot above 25, so out of 50 free throws, he made 25. I think he needs to practice a little bit more. Okay, 29, you can see there are two players that made 29 out of 50. One player that made 30. One player that made 33. One player that made 34, so we'll put a dot above the 34. Two that made 35 free throws. One that made 36. One that made 39. One that made 42, and then also one that made 44. So now we can see the chart for B. There are intervals, in other words 20 to 29, so any number ranging from 20 to 29 would be in that interval. Okay, so we can see 25, 125, and 229, so the frequency would be 3. 30 to 39, so we can look from 30 all the way to 39, and we can count our dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total in that frequency, or in that interval. And then 40 to 49, so we have 40 all the way to the very end, 45 all the way, can go all the way to 49 as well, so we can see there are a total of 2 data points within that interval. So now for letter C, it says analyze the data. How were the data collected? How many data values are there? What are the mean, median, range, and IQR of the data? So first of all, how were the data collected? We can see 12 players attempted 50 free throws each, and the number of free throws each player made was counted. Okay, so that's how the data was collected. How many data values are there? There are 12 data values. Why 12 data values? Because there are 12 players attempting free throws. Mean, median, range, and IQR. We're not going to get into doing all of that as we've done that in previous videos. The mean, 34 and 25/100ths. The median, 34 and 5/10ths, or 34.5. The range, 19, and the interquartile range would be 6. So I want you to copy that down for letter C. So now let's take a look at the reflect question. Number 1, it says, can you use a dot plot to find the mean and the median of the data? And can you use a frequency table? Why or why not? Okay, so first of all, can you use the dot plot? And yes, we have gone over that in previous videos. So we can use the dot plot to find the mean and median of the data. Can use a frequency table, and then the answer for that is no. The dot plot shows all the data values, so you can find the mean, so you can find the median and calculate the mean. The frequency table groups data only into intervals, so you can't see the individual data values. Okay, so in other words, we see that the interval 20 to 29, there's a frequency of 3, but you can see that there's 25 and 2 29s, and that's it. There's not a 20, there's not a 27, but just looking at that chart, you cannot tell that. It's just a frequency of 3 from 20 to 29. So that's why you're not able to find the median or the mean of the data. So let's take a look at number 2. It says, how can you find the number of data values in a data set from a dot plot? How can you find the number of data values from a frequency table? Well, you can see with this, so from a dot plot, we talked about this before, count the number of dots. So that's an easy way to figure out the number of data values. As far as a frequency table, you want to find the sum of the frequencies. So what I'm saying with that, so you can take a look at the sum of the frequencies. There are 12 frequencies, that's the sum. So that shows you how many data values there are, along with 12 dots within our dot plot. Now let's take a look at using a histogram. It says a histogram is a type of bar whose bars represent the frequencies of numeric data within intervals. So let's take a look at example number 1. It says a bird watcher counts and records the number of birds at a bird feeder every morning at 9 o'clock for several days. So we can see all the data values are right here in front of us. What we can do is we can make a histogram of the data. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make a frequency table. And you would like to divide the data into equal size intervals of 4. And then you want to make a frequency table. Okay, so we can see that you start with 1 and the highest number is 14. So we can do intervals of 4, so 1 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 16. Even though it goes above 16, it's not a big deal because you want to divide the intervals equally among the data. So now that we have a frequency table, what we need to do is represent all the frequencies within the intervals. So I can see 1 through 4 that there are 8 data values that would fall in that interval. 5 to 8 there are 4. 9 to 12 there are 2. 13 to 16 there are 1. Do not be upset or bothered that you only have 1 and 13 to 16. What we have just intervals of 4 within this. So it'll show us which interval is represented the most. Now what we have is now that we've done this frequency table, we need to make a histogram. So it's important to know with a histogram that the intervals are listed along the horizontal axis. Okay, so we can see 1 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 16, and we need to represent the birds that are seen. Now the frequency is represented along the vertical axis. And you also need to think of appropriate intervals. So we have intervals of 2, so 0 all the way to 12, okay, that we can see with our data. So the highest frequency is 8, so we'll be okay there. And now it's important to understand for each interval, you want to draw a bar to show the number of days in that interval. And then also it's important to know that the bars should have equal widths. So just because interval 13 to 16 only has one frequency, it's not like the width is any smaller. The bars do need to have equal widths. Now they should touch, but they do not overlap. Okay, so it's important for that. So now we can see the data represented in the histogram. So we can see the highest frequency is interval 1 to 4. So we can see that most data represented. And then the lowest frequency, or the lowest interval represented, was 13 to 16. So you can see that very easily within the histograms. We can see within the frequency table data represented on the left, and also the histogram, same data represented, just a different way of displaying it. So let's take a look at the reflect question for number 3. It's a what if question. Suppose the bird watcher continues his observations for 3 more days and collects these new data values, 5, 18, and 2. How could you change the histogram to include the data? So an answer that you could have, and I want you to copy this down, what you would need to do, you would need to add an interval from 17 to 20 to show a bar 1 unit high for the new data value of 18. You need to increase the bar heights for the intervals 1 to 4 and 5 to 8 by 1. The reason for this is because we have new data values of 5 and also 2 that would fall within those intervals. So now let's take a look at number 4. And what I want you to do is make a histogram of this data. And you can do that right in your book. And when you're finished, you can press play and I'll have the answer for you. So I want you to pause the video now. So you can see that your intervals were already created for you. So you just needed to represent the data. So you can see from 1 to 2, there was 1, 3 to 4, there were 2, 5 to 6, there were 3, 7 to 8 would be the highest represented data. 7, why do we know it's the highest? Because it's the highest bar that you can see. And then 9 to 10 would be 2. So now let's take a look at analyze in a histogram. It says by grouping data in intervals, a histogram gives a picture of the distribution of a data set. So example number 2, it says use the histogram for example 1, where or what are some conclusions about the data that you can make from the shape of the distribution. So we can see a couple things that we can see. It says the highest bar is for interval 1 to 4. Let's go back to that. So we can see highest bar interval 1 to 4, which means that on more than half the days, 8 out of 15, the bird watcher saw only 1 to 4 birds. The bars decrease in height from left to right, showing that it was more likely for the bird watcher to see a small number of birds rather than a large number on any given day. So we can see that based upon the data. So we can see 1 to 4, 8, then also as it decreases from left to right, 13 to 16, you can see only 1. Now using the histogram from number 4, your turn, what are some conclusions you can make about Kim's movie ratings from the shape of the distribution? What we can see here, and let's write this down together. So Kim gave ratings of 7 or 8 to 7 of 15 movies, and she gave ratings of 9 or 10 to 2 of 15 movies. So you can see that based upon the data, 7 to 8, we see a total of 7 movies of the total 15 movies, because there's 15 data values, and then also a rating of 9 to 10 to only 2 of the movies based upon the data that we can see in the histogram. So let's take a look at page 480, the guided practice. What I would like you to do is to complete number 1 and think about the intervals that's already been given to you. It's from 0 to 9. Then based upon that, you need to make 3 other intervals and then also record the frequency. So I'd like you to complete number 1 independently. I want you to pause the video now. Okay, so here's the answer for number 1. I want you to take a look at that and make sure you have the correct intervals and also the frequency. Now I'd like you to work on numbers 2 and 3. I'm going to complete the frequency table and the histogram, and then also write some conclusions you can make about the distribution of the data. So I want you to pause the video now. Okay, so here are the answers for numbers 2 and 3. You may have a completely different conclusion about the distribution of the data, but this gives you a good idea for number 3. Now let's wrap up the video. How can you display data in a histogram? I want you to write this down. Order the data from least to greatest. Organize the data in intervals of the same size and make a bar graph of the frequencies for each interval. So this concludes the video on histograms. If you have any questions about this concept, please come and see me.